up dive. Feel the vibe, get ready to ignite. Untold stories in the airways, flying through the night. Experience voices, tales so bold. Streaming live, the truth unfolds. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wide variety. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can't hide. Aliens in the attic, UFOs in the sky. Cryptids lurking, oh my, oh my. Ghosts in the hallway, whispering your name. The paranormal, the unexplained. Become a VIP, get the inside scoop. Unlock the mysteries, be part of the group. Live streaming stories, they're talking to you. Super chats buzzing, join the crew. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wild ride. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can hide. So if you've got the guts and you want to explore, tune into the Untold, it's what you're looking for. From aliens to ghosts and all that's unseen. Untold Radio Network, where the world's mysteries convene.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Spectrum live today here on the Untold Radio Network. I am your host, Barnaby Jones from Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society. That's right, guys. We are back live. We got a lot of recorded shows coming up in the past and coming up in the future here, but today we are live in studio. So if you guys have questions or comments throughout the show, throw them in the comments section and we'll get to them as soon as possible. I want to thank Squatch Mama. She is a brand new subscriber here on the Untold Radio Network. Thank you for your support here. We really appreciate it so much. And Joanne, another Super Chats member, welcome to the chats as well. Lee Warner, that's right, another Super Chats member. Good Thursday, the countdown to Wisconsin CapCon has begun. So excited. That's right, guys. Next weekend, Wisconsin Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Convention, May 9th through the 11th in Appleton, Wisconsin, kicks off Friday, May 9th with a Bigfoot expedition and VIP hike that is sold out. And then Saturday, we have the convention proper with over 30 vendors, speakers, and so much more. The premiere of the Hairy Man of Dairyland film documentary on Bigfoot in Wisconsin, the psychic gallery reading by Angela Zabel, all included in your Saturday ticket. If you guys can't make it in person, grab yourself a virtual ticket. All of our guest speakers that day will be live streamed on our channel, and you guys can get your ticket to that and catch everything at the convention, even if you can't make it in person. Then, guys, June 7th, we head down to the Chicago Paranormal Convention in Chicago, actually Countryside, Illinois, just on the edge of Chicago. It's going to be a great event. A lot of great guest speakers, over 80 vendors at this event, only $1 admission and free parking. You don't want to miss that one. Then I have several library presentations throughout Wisconsin. Lodi Library, June 30th, Cedarburg Library, July 17th, UFO Days in Elmwood, Wisconsin, July 26th, SilCon in Gaze, Illinois, September 19th and 20th, the Van Meter Visitor Festival, September 27th, and that's in Iowa. And then the Neenah Public Library, I will be doing a paranormal presentation on Wednesday, October 29th. And this one's going to be really cool because we're doing a paranormal investigation at the library afterwards that you can be a part of. So if you're in Wisconsin, head on over to the Neenah Public Library in October. All right, guys, that is all the stuff coming up for CAPS. So if you want to become a Super Chats member here on the Untold Radio Network, here's how.
Hey, Untold Radio Network fans. Want exclusive perks and to support our channel? Introducing our YouTube membership program with 3 amazing levels. Get loyalty badges that level up to different cryptids the longer you're a supporter. How cool is that? You'll also get access to custom Bigfoot emojis and priority in chat. Upgrade to Backstage Pass for exclusive wallpapers, photos, status updates, discounted books, and merchandise. Go all in with the producer level for everything mentioned plus member shoutouts. Ready for an enhanced experience? Join now, pick your membership level, and let's make this journey even more exciting together.
All right, guys, we are live, as I said. So if you have any questions throughout the show, put them in all caps so we get to them in the comments section. My guest today is Keith Evans. He has a bachelor's degree in chemistry from the University of Florida. He is a retired Army Reservist and a retired forensic scientist. He began contemplating paranormal research as a young child. He is the author of Vampires, Dead or Alive, and The Hayes House, Ghosts Are People Too. He hopes that you will keep an open mind and all things concerning vampires. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Keith Evans. Keith, pleasure to have you here today. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. The pleasure is mine, man. So let's delve into this here. So when we're talking about vampires, give us a little bit of background on, what are we talking about? Because there's a lot of mythology out there from different cultures. There's a lot of movie references. Tell us your definition of a vampire. What are we discussing today?
Well, to me, vampires are very complex, integral type people, just like humans. And I feel that vampires originally came extraterrestrial from another location. Probably from a dwarf star. And because of that, that's why they're so sensitive to our star, the sun's light. And my theory is that the sunlight can denature the DNA of a vampire. So I feel that vampires originated on a planetary system where they had a dwarf star, so that within their Goldilocks zone, their star would be no brighter than our moonlight is on a full moon night. So anyway, and I feel that vampires probably have come up with like a protection bubble so that they can at least survive if they do come into some type of contact with direct sunlight, whether it be from a mirror or from just stepping out too far from underneath of a shaded tree and being touched by sunlight. And this protection bubble might just do no more than bend light around them. And that's one of the reasons why I have a chapter within my book, Vampires, Dead or Alive, on why vampires don't have a mirror image. and that might be because of their ability to bend light. I'm not sure whether it's an ability within themselves, or whether they have some type of technology that we're not familiar with. There could be other reasons why they don't have a mirror image. But anyway, I will look at the fact that vampires, if they do go out in the light, it would kill them. So our sunlight.
Mhm.
So I feel that denotes that they were probably originally from a planet whose Goldilocks zone was near to a dwarf star, and that's the reason why they can't be out in the sun, because it'll just kill them. If your DNA denatures, it just kind of unravels, which you can't survive. And DNA is just a twisted chain of amino acids. So I hope everyone will, check out my book, and it's full of science. It has everything from genetics to chemistry to astrophysics. So I think you would enjoy that.
Absolutely. That's a good, interesting point, that, if they have this bubble of protection around them, that would also help with the reflective qualities of the mirrors. We hear stuff like that, hypothesized in Bigfoot research as well, that these things have like a cloaking ability with the way their hair kind of shimmers or reflects light. So it's kind of interesting that you kind of tie the two with this bubble aspect, that, it's not, out of the realm of possibility to have such a device that's more of natural, or, projected from a being.
And I really feel that vampires have interbreeded with humans throughout they might have been here for hundreds of years, thousands of years. And if they've interbreeded with humans, all of us might have a little bit of vampire within us. So we may not have all the abilities of a historical vampire, but we might have some. So that's another interesting factor. And also, by vampires interbreeding with humans, it might give them some protection from being out in the direct sunlight. I know some people are more sensitive to sunlight than other people. For instance, like people who are albinos. I don't know, maybe that gene came from an extraterrestrial vampire. Maybe not. But I do know that it would be one form of protection to dilute your DNA if a vampire has within their DNA that threat of being exposed to direct sunlight. I mean, the wind could blow the roof off the house, and then you would be exposed to direct sunlight. So it's always good to have some type of protection. So if I was a vampire, I would definitely want to interbreed so that my children and grandchildren would have a safer life and not be killed by the next time they're exposed to direct sunlight.
Lee Warner has a question here. She would like to know, do you think that vampires are born as a vampire? You talked about the interbreeding. If you are the child of a vampire, are you vampiric in nature, or is that something that has to be made? Like we hear, you have to be bitten by a vampire in order to do that.
Well, I think the possibility both scenarios could take place, but historically, you have to die from being bitten by a vampire. If the vampire is just feeding off of you and you don't die, then you won't become a vampire. But I think if the vampire interbreeds with humans, which I think that has happened, then you're going to have the vampire's DNA within you just from the breeding process.
Interesting. Yeah, that kind of does go with the folklore and stuff of, you can be fed on but not turned. You have to be, like you said, almost drained to death, and then usually don't they replace your blood with part of theirs or something in order to complete the transformation?
No, I think just the fact that you pass away from the vampire feeding too much on you would allow you to become a vampire. I think as long as you're alive now, it's not to say that anyone who's been bitten by a vampire, sooner or later they're going to die on, from other causes, old age or whatever. So apparently, if you've been bitten once and whatever you die, then you're going to be a vampire too, if the legend holds true.
So do you think how many vampires do you think are out there? Like how many people do you think have been actually bitten by vampires?
Well, I don't know if vampires really bite anymore. They might find alternative ways of feeding. And if they've interbreeded with, regular humans from Earth, they might not even need to feed anymore. They might have some abilities to shapeshift or dematerialize, but they might not even have the need to feed on blood anymore. They might just be able to eat food like, regular humans.
That's an interesting point. There are other, species out there, obviously, like mosquitoes or vampire bats, that their primary source of nutrients is blood. So you think that these the vampires have evolved or kind of grown out in modern days to be able to get their nutrients from other things as well then?
I think so. Maybe not all, but some.
Interesting. That makes a lot of sense. So what do you think about like some of the other stereotypes of these things? Do you think that they are truly immortal?
Well, I think there's a possibility that they can live a very long life. I don't know if anything can live forever, especially if it has a biological body. I think even if a vampire was exposed to like a supernova, superheated star, they would probably vaporize. And of course, vampires, unless they've interbreeded with humans, if they're exposed to our star, the sunlight, direct sunlight, their DNA will unravel. It's called denatured. So, under certain conditions, I'm sure that vampires can be destroyed. Like maybe severe radioisotopes would probably kill a vampire. But under normal conditions, I think they can live to be very old. And at that point in time, to avoid suspicion, they'd almost have to maybe fake their death and move someplace else and change their name. That's the only way I could see them doing it without drawing a heck of a lot of attention to themselves.
Interesting. I've heard you talk on some other shows about how if you have this DNA in you to become a vampire, or you've been bred or something, that after you die, your body can regenerate and possibly come back as a vampire. And
yes,
go ahead.
I feel that in the past, prior to the Civil War, the 1850s, most people were just buried. They weren't embalmed. They didn't use any type of embalming fluid to preserve their body. So I think now the fact that you're using embalming fluid, that's so corrosive that even if a person is part vampire and has the ability to heal, once they are considered dead by medical science, that if they are embalmed, that would stop that in a heartbeat. But if they aren't embalmed, then they're placed in a warm, dry, sealed coffin or casket, and they do have the vampire gene in them to heal while in a deep coma. That could be done with very little oxygen, with very little, if no water, no food, and they could still heal, and they won't reanimate until their coffin is open. So it's almost like the vampire is within the body only if the coffin is open up. Otherwise, they'd be bored to death if they were like just locked in the coffin. I think the vampire might be able to go to another dimension where they can enjoy life outside of their biological body, which is in the coffin. And the only time in the past that anyone has recognized this would be grave robbers who were either robbing a grave to sell the body to a medical school, or robbing the grave just to steal whatever valuables the person was buried with. And of course, they got a real big surprise when the person reanimated. But it'd be nice if we could go back to the bodies of pre-Civil War individuals who we know have not been embalmed with embalming fluid, and legally be able to reopen their coffins to see if there's any reanimation. That would be a neat experiment. And if they don't reanimate, then reseal them with, dignity and with whatever their religious preference was, if they had one at the time when they passed away.
So do you hypothesize that anyone that was buried pre-Civil War has the ability to come back as a vampire, or only ones that have been like interbred or fed upon or anything like that?
Yeah, they'd have to have the vampire gene. So they would have been have to have been a vampire gene. Some relative in the past was a vampire, and then they had that gene. And the same goes with a vampire. If a person was bit by a vampire and they passed away, that could happen also, if they haven't already reanimated before they were put into ground.
When you're looking into all this stuff for the book, did you happen to come across any stories of grave robbers having this instance happen at all?
In the past, I've heard about it and I've read about it. In the past, I cannot say whether what I read was pure fiction or whether some of it was, actual eyewitness situation. But I think in many cases in the past, sometimes to sell newspapers, they might make stuff up. So I don't know for sure.
Interesting. Looking back into, the history and stuff, when people were buried and, we didn't know all the stuff that we know about death and rigor mortis now, and that I wonder if, any of those grave robbers or something dug up these corpses and, they're laying flat in the casket when they pass away, but as the body contracts and loses water and stuff, they can sit up. And if these guys are opening the caskets and stuff that are buried, and all of a sudden one of these things sits up because of that, I wonder how many times that's actually happened throughout history.
Well, I guess if the body had been newly buried, it's a possibility. Mm-hmm. And I think grave robbers went for newly buried bodies because if you dug up a body that had been buried too long, it might not be able to be utilized by the medical school. Now, if they were just digging up a body just to rob it, I guess any age would be okay. But as far as digging up a newly passed away person, it's a possibility. I've heard of people that worked in mortuaries and undertakers saying that, there's involuntary type, like gases in the stomach are released, especially if the person ate a good meal before they passed away. So that can happen.
Yeah, there's truth behind the whole being buried with a bell above the grave and on the tombstones and stuff, because we didn't know everything that we knew about death. And sometimes, unfortunately, it did happen where people were in a coma or, just knocked unconscious, and they were buried alive. And that's why people started running this, chain or rope down into the ground, and they'd be able to ring the bell and have somebody dig them up if they were still alive down there. So it's quite possible.
That that would definitely help.
Yeah. And Joanne has a question here. She says, in your opinion, do you think David Bowie was a vampire? Or is, if he's still alive?
I'm trying to think. I think David Bowie passed away, but I have no idea. I really haven't read too much about David Bowie other than I like some of his songs.
Yeah. Kind of an odd question. I mean, David Bowie, for me at least, is famous for the movie The Labyrinth, and he was a goblin king in that. So not a vampire. But why, and Joanne, why do you think that he was a vampire? Why is that your question? I could see why you would think that, but interesting. Do you know of any famous people or celebrities or anything that you would possibly consider to be vampires? I know there's been a lot of times people have found like facial recognition throughout history where people have very similar facial structures as past celebrities or past people, and you could use that as a kind of drawing board to say that these people are vampiric or something, that they have this extra long lifeline.
No, I can't say that I know of any documentation of that. I've heard different people talk about a certain person they thought was a vampire in New Orleans that had been seen multiple times over a couple hundred years, but everyone tells me I look a lot like my grandfather on my father's side. He passed away before I was born, so I might just be him reincarnated.
Mm-hmm. Possible. And when you have like a genetic line like that too, you do tend to pass down certain facial traits and, even mannerisms and stuff,
Yes.
that you act or you speak or sound like other people that have passed in your family. So interesting.
And a lot of times just hereditary, the way your father would react to something, you would react to it the same way, even without knowing how he may react to it. So, everyone has their own personality, but I think that there's a lot more to a vampire than most people give vampires credit. I mean, if you were going to have anybody be able to do long-term space travel, if you had a vampire that could just at will place themselves into a long-term coma, that way they could endure the space travel with little food or water and also with less oxygen. Because it's like hibernating bears. Hibernating bears, their metabolism slows down to the point that they're not breathing a whole lot. Their respiratory rate slows down. And at times they're not eating or drinking. So a vampire would be the perfect person for long term space travel. Most people are always thinking of a vampire as something that's going to kill them or something that's going to end their life or something to fear or something to dread. I look at it as a scientific wonder to study, not kill them and study, but study them and understand why they are the way they are and how they do what they do. And my book, Vampires Dead or Alive, kind of looks at the main question, are they dead or are they alive? And I look at some of the things they do, and a lot of things vampires do. I don't know of any dead person being able to do that. And some of the stuff they do, I don't know of any living person that could do that. So each chapter in my book, I pick a historical trait of a vampire, and then I look at, is that more like what a dead person or a living person could do? And then I try to theoretically explain with science why a vampire can do what they do. For instance, like why a vampire can dematerialize. And I think vampires can bend space and time through some type of, possibly they have a small black hole that they can use to localize the bend of space and time. So it's just for their physical body and not anyone else in the room or in the area. And they bend space and time back to when their soul was not in a biological body of any sort. And that's how they disappear. You're seeing them as they went back in time to when they were just a soul. And I feel that when you pass away, your body, biological body no longer works, but your personality, your soul goes into a small packet of electromagnetic energy. And that electromagnetic energy can exist for maybe years before you're recycled into another biological body. And it might not be the same species that you left when you passed away. So, for instance, if you come back as, say, a cat, that could happen. But I think we have been recycled. I guess they call it reincarnation. Mm-hmm. I think we have been recycled thousands of times. And, my spirit and soul, my electromagnetic energy might have been in a multitude of different animals. So if I had the ability to bend space and time, say if someone was looking for me, I might be able to bend space and time to when I was a butterfly. They said, well, I thought Keith was in this room. All I see is a butterfly floating around. So I guess you could use it to maybe avoid people or avoid detection, go someplace without anyone knowing you're sneaking in if you want to look around and see what's going on or whatever, and just do it as a butterfly. But you got to be careful. Somebody to have a fly swatter, and that would be it. So I really feel that vampires are really magnificent type species, and they deserve a lot more attention to their abilities and what they can do, and less about being afraid of them. I think by being afraid of a vampire, you're just kind of like shooting yourself in the foot just for the fun of it. Mm-hmm. If you look at a vampire and what he can do and try to understand it and maybe reduplicate it, you could you might be able to live forever. So that would be nice, even if you don't have the vampire gene.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So, we got the vampire bats. We talked about that earlier about, the drinking blood and stuff like that. Do you think that they are implicitly connected to vampires at all? Like reincarnated or something into that? Because if you're talking about different creatures and stuff that, you could be a butterfly example, you said, so why would they specifically choose a vampire or a bat in general, I guess? Like, why are there no mythologies or folklores of any other animals?
Well, I think a vampire could turn into whatever animal he needed to turn into at the time. If he wanted to run away fast and he had been a horse in a past lifetime, he could bend space and time, to go back to when he was actually a horse. Now, there could be alternative ways of bending space and time. He might have some type of technology where he can multiply ley lines within the earth to cause enough energy to momentarily bend space and time back to when he was a horse, and enough time to get away before he becomes a vampire again. And, most vampires, they pretty much look like you and I. But as far as a vampire bat having once been a vampire, I don't think there's any connection, because mosquitoes drink blood too. And they say that for vampire bats to be the way they are, there was I don't think it was a university. It was a group of researchers who were studying as a business, and I think they were located in New Zealand, and they were studying the DNA sequencing of fruit bats versus blood drinking bats, the vampire bats. And they had noticed that in some cases, vampire bats were missing. They had a lesser number of amino acids. So they were missing amino acids within their DNA, which allowed them to drink blood. Because to drink blood has a high iron content.
Mm-hmm.
And if you drink blood, you're going to have all types of problems in your digestive system. And vampire bats, their taste buds, their ability to taste has been altered by missing amino acids so that they don't taste the extreme iron content of blood. And also the vampires' intestines and stomach have special linings which absorb the iron out of their, I guess you could say, body and excrete it. So they're not really absorbing all that iron as they, are eating. It's kind of absorbed out of the body. So there's a lot of genetics going on that allows a bat to change from a bug and fruit eating bat to a blood drinking bat. And vampire bats don't have hydraulic or hypodermic canines. Vampire bats actually take their teeth and they scratch the surface of a large mammal, like say a cow or a elk or a reindeer, and then they just slurp on the blood. But vampire bats are mainly in warm climates. I guess they could survive in Florida, but they're usually near the equator, especially in South America. I don't know if they're naturally any place else in the world, but I know they're definitely in South America. So I don't think there's really any connection between a vampire bat and a vampire, other than the fact that they've had alternative, I guess you could say maybe over the years, somehow that another bat was born without a certain amount of amino acids within its DNA, and he became a vampire bat. So, but I don't think there's any real connection between the history of a vampire and a vampire bat. They're just two different species altogether.
Fair enough. Lee Warner would like to know, what are your thoughts on the chupacabra? So the pet, it's been hypothesized. Oh, whatever. It has been hypothesized that this is the pet of vampires. And you mentioned like you thought that vampires were from a dwarf star system. Some people believe that the chupacabra was an alien pet that had been left on Earth. Have you looked into vampire? Oh my gosh, I'm not doing well. Have you looked into chupacabras or done any research on them?
I have not. If I see something on it, I'll read it if I have time. But there's always a possibility. It's not out of the limits of being true, because if you're a vampire and you're going to leave your star system for whatever, you're going to probably take as many creature comforts to remind you of home as possible. So if they had a pet or a dog, well, then they would take the pet or dog. Now, I don't know too much about this animal's ability to withstand sunlight, or whether it denatures if it's out in the sun. I've really had little or no time to research that animal at all.
Yeah, that's the first thing that popped into my head when I read that question. I don't think that they have any aversion to sunlight like a typical vampire, because they're mostly found like in the southern United States and Texas and Puerto Rico, Mexico areas, and I don't think they have any problem being out in the hot sun. So
Well, I've never heard of anyone say that they seen them out in the sun. So there's a possibility that if they only come out at night, they could be from a star system and have the same problem that the vampires have, as far as they'll be denatured. And if you're denatured, you're probably going to go from being a solid to just going into a gas phase where steam would come off of you as you die.
interesting. So let me ask you this: do you think that if these beings did come from another planet, do you think that they had a food source on that planet similar to humans to feed on, or other animals, or do you think that they were basically like cannibals at that time because they would have to feed on each other?
Well, another planet, there could be, for instance, vegetables that are different than vegetables here.
Right.
There might be vegetables that are more like biological bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So they could maybe eat vegetables and just drink the blood, not have to kill the vegetable on their planet. There's nothing to say. Right here, air vegetation is all photosynthesis.
Mm-hmm.
If you're on a planet where you have a dwarf, I don't know what would be considered a white or a blue star, but if you have a dwarf star that gives very little sunlight, your vegetation might be more biological than vegetable-like. So maybe they were perfectly fine with being a vegetarian blood source. You know how like protein can be either like a bean, or protein can be a rabbit or a squirrel or a chicken or a cow.
Mm-hmm.
So they might have got their blood from what we might consider more like vegetables, but on their planet, it might have a biological system where they breathe air, and they might be like what was that called? The fly trap, the plant on Earth that eats flies, Venus flycatcher.
Yep.
They might be more like that and have a biological system where they have edible blood for the vampires. So maybe drinking blood on their planet, they could still be a vegetarian and never touch another biological entity that looks more like a human being like us.
That's definitely a good point. Science is very narrow-minded, I think, here on Earth. That we think of life as a carbon-based life form, that it has to be like us. We have that very narrow-minded aspect to it, and life and vegetation and all that stuff can look very different. We're discovering more and more species on Earth here. Even I just read something last night. I can't remember what it was offhand, but it was a form of bacteria or something that did not use oxygen at all, if I remember correctly.
Did you say did not use oxygen at all?
Oxygen, I believe. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that's what it read, that it was a form of bacteria, I think.
It's an extremophile that lives in the bottom of the ocean near volcanic vents.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm trying to remember, but there's some type of element given off by a volcanic vent, and it eats that element. And it's been a long time since I read about that. And I'm sorry, but I can't remember what the element was. But they're called extremophiles. And what we have here on Earth as extremophiles might just be life from other planets where we couldn't survive, because it would be too hot, too high pressure. If we went to the bottom of the ocean, it would squish us. So, but that is interesting, and it could be from another planet, that form of life, and it could be life that just evolved here on Earth under the conditions that were available for it to evolve.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. My wonderful backstage helper here, Lee Warner, says anaerobic bacteria. I assume that she Googled what I was talking about, and that's what we came up with. But
yes.
I believe, if I'm right, Lee, that that was no oxygen that it required to live. So
it's kind of like on Earth gangrene that people get that eats their tissues. It travels about 1 inch an hour. That's an anaerobic bacteria, gangrene.
Obligate anaerobes. That's what they are.
It just means without oxygen.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. All right. So one last thing here that not last, but one more thing that we're talking about here is the whole aversion to garlic. We hear a lot of that as well, or silver for that matter. Do you have any ideas why these things would have an issue with garlic?
I didn't touch on that in my book, but I like garlic myself. I think it tastes good. I like it on food, but the after effects when I belch, I don't know, it's kind of obnoxious.
Yeah.
And I don't find too much obnoxious, but I don't know. It could be something minor. I don't think there's any chemical reason for a vampire to have to avoid garlic. And it could be just people say if you put salt down, it'll keep spirits away. It might just be something that over the years people have made up so they'd feel like they had control over their environment. And everyone had salt and everyone had garlic. So if you want to feel secure and feel like, well, I'm going to keep the vampires away with the garlic, I'm going to keep the ghosts and spirits away with the salt. Mm-hmm. I remember when my grandma started to develop Alzheimer's. Mm-hmm. Sometimes she would be very elusive and sometimes she would not. But she told me many times that ghosts and spirits were visiting her. And I would say, well, I believe you, but I cannot see them. And every ghost and spirit that visited her was upset with her about something. So when they visit me, they're pretty cool and collected. So she always put down salt, and she had hardwood floors. So I would have to go around, pick up the salt, because it's very abrasive, the hardwood floors, and try not to upset her since she was doing it to protect herself. But she was putting it at the doorway of her bedroom, at the 2 entrances to her house. So theoretically, at this point in time, I haven't really thought about it a whole lot, but I don't know if it really does anything more than a placebo effect. I think it makes the person who's using the garlic and to keep away vampires and using the salt to keep away ghosts and spirits, it makes them feel better. But I don't honestly think it works. I mean, ghosts and spirits are electromagnetic energy. I don't think they need a portal to visit you. I don't think they need to go around salt objects. I think they can move the speed of light. And if they want to visit you, they can visit you. And I think garlic, it might be something that if you have a whole lot of it, will kind of cause most people to avoid it, whether it's a plant or whether you use a whole lot in food. I like a little bit. I don't like a whole lot. A whole lot in food kind of turns me off. So I guess that we feel that if it turns us off, it'll turn a vampire off. But I think it's more wishful thinking and a placebo effect than really has a basis in biological genetics or chemistry or physics. I don't think there's any connection. So if you're going to use that, I think you'd be out of luck possibly to keep a vampire away.
Yeah. I don't know. It's, like, I don't know offhand what they're related to, but there's garlic is in the family of other plants, whether it be, I want to say like onions and things like that of that nature. So there's no reason to think that, if a clove of garlic will keep a vampire away, then why wouldn't an onion or something, I'm not sure what all is in that family of plants, but, it's interesting, like tobacco and mint and catnip are all in the same family. So I find that very interesting as well, that these different plants are all kind of connected in that. So I don't know offhand what's related to garlic, but I know that there's stuff out there. So why wouldn't those plants or vegetables or whatever also have the same effect that garlic would? So you're right. I don't know, but interesting. All right, guys, we are coming up on the end of the show. If you have any other vampire related questions or anything else related to this to talk with my guest here about, throw them in the comments section and we will get to it before the end of the show today. So
yeah, please ask me some more questions, especially someone who's read my book. If you read my book, come up with some good questions. Absolutely.
Chives, onions, and other onions are all related to garlic. So see, I was right. It was kind of that same family. So very cool. Thank you, Lee.
Was that a question?
No, it was a statement, but
I see. Well, my book, this past month of April, the sales were up in United Kingdom and Japan. So I would love to be on a podcast in one of those locations. Now, if someone is in Japan or the United Kingdom and they're watching your podcast live, can they also ask the question?
They can. Yep. Anybody that's watching on any of the platforms from Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter can all do that.
Well, I welcome anyone from Japan or the United Kingdom to quickly ask the question. I'm all ears. I want to answer your questions.
Awesome. Not from Japan or the United Kingdom, but Lee wanted to know, I think you kind of touched on this. How do you kill a vampire?
Well, I think the easiest way would be to get them out in the sunlight, trap them in the sunlight, and their DNA will just denatured. And they'll go from like a solid to a gas as their DNA unravels. And there are other ways. You can use a silver bullet or a stake to the heart will kill them, a silver stake. And I'm trying to think. I feel that like exposure to like a radioisotope will kill any type of life, even if it's a vampire life. And I think, an explosion, any type of explosion, whether it be nuclear or a blast from a other type of explosives, would just rip a person's or a vampire's body apart into little pieces. So there are types of ways to kill a vampire.
Do you think that the sunlight would be instantaneous? Like, would the DNA react that quickly, or would it kind of deteriorate over time?
I think it'll deteriorate over time, but it will start. I think it would be agonizing once your DNA starts to unravel. But I think it depends how long you're exposed to the sunlight. So you'd almost have to trap a vampire out in direct sunlight for a prolonged period. I'm not sure how long that would be. And then even if they're exposed for a certain period of time and they make it back in out from the sunlight into the shade, it depends how much damage has been done and how much DNA has been denatured.
What about holy water? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, water is ionic, and I guess you could say it's polar ionic. It means that one side of the water molecule has a positive charge and the other side has a negative charge. So there's a possibility that might have a harmful effect upon a vampire, just in the nature of its having both a negative and a positive charge. I think it could actually have a harmful effect. I don't think it will kill a vampire, especially if the vampire is breeded with humans. Mm-hmm. And then vampires, if they have a protection bubble that protects them from sun, they might have a protection bubble that would protect them from water. So the fact that holy water has been blessed by a priest, or I don't look at vampires as being evil or demonic, so that might only help if whatever the water is put on would be evil or demonic. So I'm not sure if it would have any type of effect on a vampire just because it's been blessed by a priest. But other than that, it could have a harmful effect just because the nature of water is it's got that, I hate to say bipolar, but I'm trying to look for the proper name chemistry wise, that it just means that water has both a positive and negative charge and can be a highly reactive compound. So that might have give a vampire some problems.
Interesting. Lee also would like to add the positive negative effect. Does that go along with the lore that vampires cannot cross moving water?
Oh, what was the type of water they cannot cross?
Moving, like a flowing river or any kind of moving water.
Okay. Yeah, I think that has a lot to do with it. I think I don't think it will kill them, but I'm not sure of what result it will have to them. It seems like it would be negative. I didn't go into that in my book, but it's negative enough to repel them or to keep them from crossing. I've heard the same thing about if there's like an underground spring that is close to the surface but still under the ground, the vampire won't cross it. So I don't think it will kill them, but somehow it's an adverse reaction enough to cause them not to cross. And that's probably another good reason why a vampire would want to mate with human beings, so they would not have to live with that adverse reaction. But I'm not sure what that adverse reaction would be. It could cause their body to become numb. It could cause neurological problems, like cause them to be forgetful or be unable to concentrate. I just know water is a very unique molecule. I don't think there's any other molecules on Earth that one end has a positive charge and the other end has a negative charge. But like water is highly reactive. So that charge doesn't last long before it is connected with other water. So if the body of water itself does not have a positive and negative charge, only theoretically the molecule by itself has a the positive and negative charge. And I can't think of the term for it. I hate to use bipolar, but it's not bipolar, but is another term in chemistry that they use to explain how water has both a positive and negative charge, because water is actually H2O, and the hydrogen has a positive charge and the oxygen has a negative charge. But it doesn't stay that way long. It's highly reactive with other water molecules.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Is there any other, I guess, liquid that you can freeze to make like an ice? You know, like water can be liquid, gas, or solid, you know, in ice form and stuff. What other liquids actually have that ability?
Well, I think on Earth, at 1 atmosphere, water is the only one I know that has a positive and a negative, and it's just, you know, three atoms. It's one hydrogen and two atoms make up, two oxygen atoms make up the water molecule. I know any liquid, if you increase the pressure and the temperature, you can cause it to go from a liquid to a solid.
Okay.
But I think it wouldn't be the ambient temperature. The ambient temperature on Earth and the ambient pressure, which is 1 atmosphere, you know, water will freeze at 1 atmosphere at 32 degrees, but, you know, other things like, you know, liquid nitrogen,
Yeah.
It can only go from a gas to a liquid if it's inside your bloodstream and you are under the water at a certain depth and pressure. And then the gas nitrogen within your blood will turn into liquid nitrogen. And that's the reason why you got to come up so slow, because in your muscles, it causes a lot of pain, which is called, the slang term is called the bends.
Mm-hmm.
And some people have to go into a
hyperbolic chamber.
Yes, hyperbolic chamber to recover from that, because they have to go back to a greater pressure. And when we're in a hyperbaric chamber, we're able to heal faster because more oxygen is absorbed by the tissue, and our tissues will absorb faster if we're under greater pressure. When I had kidney failure right after I retired in 2017, I retired in 2016, and January of 2017, I had kidney failure. And when that happens, your body will shut down blood going to your head and your distal ends, like your feet and your toes. And I had 2 toes that had dry gangrene, not wet, but dry gangrene. And for those toes to heal, the doctor recommended going into the hyperbaric chamber. And I did that for maybe 2 or 3 months. I think it was just about 2 or 3 days, at least 3 times a week, maybe Monday through Friday, maybe 5 times a week. But I did that to help those toes to heal. So there's a possibility that a vampire might have an ill effect to water and garlic under the same effect that we have. You know, the garlic or the water might actually cause problems with their blood system, to cause maybe nitrogen to leak out, which might cause the pain and cause them to want to back off. That's the only thing that I could think of. And it's kind of like us getting the bends if we go in deep water and come up too quick, because that liquid nitrogen is still within the muscles of our body. And it can kill you if it goes through your brain or your heart.
Interesting. Well, we are at the top of the hour here, so we are all out of time for this episode. But before we go, I do want to talk to you a little bit real quick here about, so you got your one book here. It is out in print right now, Vampires, Dead or Alive. You can get that on Amazon, and the links are in the show notes. Your first book here, though, as well, The Hayes House, Ghosts Are People Too, is now out of print, but you can still get it as an ebook on Amazon. Before we go, you want to give kind of an elevator pitch. What is The Hayes House all about?
Well, both The Hayes House and Vampires Dead or Alive are available on Kindle. And The Hayes House, Ghosts Are People Too, is about a house that was built in 1908 in Apalachicola, Florida. And basically, the first 100 years of its existence, it had mainly two families that had lived there, the Buck family and the Hayes family. I didn't know that much about the Buck family, so the first chapter is just a history of the Buck family. But starting at chapter 2 through, I think it's got 19 chapters, what I do is I start out the chapter. Each chapter is a room or a porch at the house. They actually had a first floor front porch, back porch, and a second floor front porch. So each chapter is about a place within the house. And I start out by giving the history of how the Hayes family used the house. For instance, like how they used the dining room, that they had, the family would meet there for Christmas and Thanksgiving dinners from 1942 until the last Hayes family member moved away, which was Kathleen, in 1996. So there was like 54 years that the Hayes family met there for Thanksgiving and Christmas dinner. And more or less, I would cover how the family used the dining room. Then I would do my paranormal research, and I do like a transcript of the paranormal research. Everything that happened, when I got words from the Obelisk 5, and it's all time sequence. When I looked with my thermal imager and got a cold area that was unexplained, when the millimeter readings went off and they were either a cooler temperature or higher electromagnetic energy, everything is documented almost like a court transcript. And then the third part of each chapter is my analysis of the data that I received during that paranormal session. So, and it's, to me, it shows that ghosts and spirits, even after they pass away, they still come back to be like a guardian angel and look after the house that they loved, the house that they lived in for the better part of their life. So I find that to be heartwarming. So many people agonize over ghosts and spirits and their fear of them, and their dreading them and wanting to avoid them. At the Hayes House, I just want to go and meet ghosts and spirits like that, because I just think it's great that even though they passed away, they still love the house they lived in. They retain that part of their humanity, even though they're electromagnetic energy.
Absolutely. Very interesting. I love the scientific data and stuff that you provide in that book. That's really interesting. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Very cool. And one last thing before we go here, you have a YouTube channel. Tell us all about that and what's going on over there.
Yes, I have a YouTube channel. It's called Paranormal Short Sessions by Keith Evans. I started it, I guess it was about March or April of 2021. And once a week, at least once a week, I might sometimes do more, I'll do paranormal research for about 15 to 30 minutes. And when I do paranormal research, I I'll do promos that I will put on Facebook and Instagram. But if I'm getting good data on a promo, I won't cut away from it. So Facebook and Instagram will only give you about 60 seconds and then cut you off. So I started putting the promos on my YouTube channel. So if people want to look at the promo, they can. So now, say I just placed Paranormal Short Session 15 for 2025 onto my YouTube channel. Each year I start over at Paranormal Short Session 1. So, and if I'm going to multiple places, I'll have a 1, 2, and 3 for each place. But if I'm just staying in one town, I'll just put them all together and one through however many I'm doing. Right now I'm on 15. But most of the ghosts and spirits that I run across are just, they're just normal, everyday people that are happy to have an opportunity to communicate with you. I don't run across anything evil or demonic, at least I haven't yet. And I'm glad I haven't, because I like people that want to talk to me, want to enjoy my company, and I want to learn something from them. I want to know something about their history, something that I wouldn't know otherwise. And most ghosts and spirits are happy to talk with you. And I really feel that the Obelisk 5 requires a lot of energy. So a lot of times they have to choose their words sparingly. Otherwise, they're going to run out of energy, and then you're not going to hear anything from them. But I think it's a neat way. If you're looking to be frightened, you're going to be disappointed, because I don't really see, I'm not exploiting the paranormal to scare people. I'm exploiting the paranormal to learn from a ghost or spirit, to learn more about history, and just to understand how the afterlife works and try to explain that to everyone else. So when you've been involved with the paranormal like I have since I was about 4 years old, you kind of get over the scary part. I find there's more things to be afraid about with life, far more things to be afraid with about life than about any of the ghosts and spirits I've ever ran into. So to be afraid of the ghosts and spirits, to me, is just kind of like you're wasting your time and effort, because it's nothing really to be afraid of.
Interesting. When you use the obelisk, do you have it on phonic mode, or do you have it on the word mode? Or what mode do you use, I guess, if not those?
Well, routinely on phonic mode, I usually don't get words. Sometimes I do. And I usually, just get a bunch of mumble jumble, because more or less, to me, it's sounds and syllables. And if a ghost is good at using sounds and syllables to give you a word, I think I would have a hard time with that. If I died right now and you had an obelisk, I probably couldn't do the phonics either. But sometimes I do get words with the phonics, and sometimes you can hear it. So recently I've been using phonics, and also been using the true or false, and you can also say yes or no. But I think on the Obelisk 5, it's the right mode in the center, and they just put a T and a division sign and a false. But true is green, and red is false. Or, you say green, yes, and no, red. But I really have a pretty good time with yes and no questions. But sometimes I'll ask a question like, you can see right there on the tombstone, the person might have died in 1880. And I'll ask them, did you die in 1881? And they'll say true. But you're looking right at it, it's false. So sometimes I don't know if the ghosts and spirits just don't like me doing that, but I try to do it to show that it's an intelligent spirit. And maybe the ghosts and spirits being nice and just think, well, he just screwed up and he meant to say 1880, so I'll disagree with him. Yeah. They might not want to point out my obvious that I obviously made a mistake. But I do it hoping that they will point it out and it will show that they're an intelligent spirit. But maybe they're just being nice and kind and thinking that I screwed up and they don't want to point it out. And they just agree and say, yeah, I died in 1881, even though the tombstone says 1880. But that's the type of ghost of spirits I run into. I don't run into anything that wants to hurt me or be vicious or make my day miserable. And when it comes to the terminology that you hear a lot on TV about, I'm trying to think of the term, attachments. That just, to me, it's a made up thing just to cause you anxiety. If a ghost of spirit wants to hang out with you or visit you, it's like friends and family. If they like you, they're going to be around. If they don't like you, you're not going to see them. So ghosts of spirits are the same way. I don't think, there's some type of evil thing going on where they are stuck to you so they can make your life miserable. I think that's just, it's kind of made up for TV drama. And it's like words that people think are the major part of the dictionary for paranormal research. And it's really not, at least not in my life. And I've been doing this, I'm 67, and I've been doing it since I was 4 years old, off and on in some primitive way. So, and I haven't ran across any attachments. And, I've run across ghosts and spirits who want to be around me, either because they're my guardian angel or either because they enjoy my company or want to get a point across, but not because they want to make me miserable or harm me in any way. And that's one thing I like people to understand and know. I mean, if ghosts and spirits were harmful, wouldn't I be a lot more screwed up than what I am? Now, some people might look at me and say, well, he's pretty screwed up. But I don't think I am. I think, when I had kidney failure, 2 doctors told me I was going to die. And I just kept a straight face and looked at them and said, well, God didn't say anything about me dying today, so I think I'm going to live. And then they just kind of smiled and said, well, everyone thinks that. And then they walked out of the room. And I thought, as an Army medic, I would never tell anyone that they were going to die.
Yeah.
No matter what I thought about the situation. So anyway, I think we have to have a positive look at life and death, and we have to start taking paranormal in a more educated way and not be afraid of it. It's kind of like cavemen would look up and see the eclipse of the sun and say, oh my God, we're all going to die. Now we look up and see the eclipse of the sun and we just say, well, that's astronomy. And I think someday, it might take hundreds of years, but someday in America, we won't look at paranormal as being something to be afraid of. We'll look at paranormal as something to learn more about. And I think it's fun to learn about things that we don't understand fully. I think it's really interesting, and we might even be able to someday recognize people who are just electromagnetic energy once they pass away. We might even recognize that, as a form of life. We may have been electromagnetic energy before we became a biological person. It could have been an enemy or someone who wanted to use their intelligence to do physical work, who actually encapsulated us into a biological body. Maybe we're supposed to be electromagnetic energy, and that's our intelligence, to be electromagnetic energy, intelligent, if you could call that an existence or a being or whatever. But maybe we're not really supposed to be in a biological body. Maybe that was just some other force to do that, to capture us, so they could get us to do work and have it done the way they wanted it done.
Oh, you never know. Interesting. Awesome. Well, this has been an absolute fascinating interview, and I really appreciate your time, and a lot of interesting things to think about coming away from this. So hopefully everyone enjoyed it. Lee said it was a very interesting show, says thank you again very much for coming on, and that's it, man.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So again, if you guys are interested, check out the Hayes House. It is available on ebook, so that you can check that out. Still not in print. You can probably find it in print somewhere, on some sites if you're interested still, but still in ebook form. And then Vampires Dead or Alive is available in print or in ebook, wherever you get your awesome books. So both of those are in the show notes for anybody that's interested. You can go check those out, as well as the link to his YouTube channel. So thank you so much for coming on today, Keith.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You take care. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right, guys, that is our show for this week, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for enjoying the show. Remember to like, subscribe, and share on your chosen platform, whether it be YouTube or your podcast station. All things here on the Untold Radio Network and my team, Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society. Remember, you still have time to get yourself a virtual ticket for next week's Appleton Convention, Cryptids, Anomalies, and Paranormal Convention, and hope you guys all tune in and check that out as well. Until next time, guys, remember, we are all part of the Paranormal Spectrum. Take care, be well, and I'll see you next week.
You seem to know something I don't. What's going on?